Welcome to the inaugural Size Up training, Size Up Kentucky training. We're happy to have you all with us today, and we definitely appreciate your time and more importantly, your service to this Commonwealth. So, as we all collectively mitigate the challenges of 2020, we know that we have to seek every opportunity to identify solutions and to leverage strengths to emerge and then to thrive. So we know there is definitely power in convergence and great intellectual capital from within Kentucky's business and Kentucky's economic development and Kentucky's university communities who are with us today. And that power will move Kentucky forward as we together craft strategies and solutions and programming like the Kentucky Economic Recovery and Resilience Project, which is a collaborative initiative of KAED, the Kentucky Association for Economic Development, and the University of Kentucky, particularly SEDIC at the University of Kentucky, led by our great friend, Dr. Allison Davis. So an important piece of our collaborative recovery and resilience effort is to provide capacity building resources to Kentucky enterprise, to Kentucky communities, and to Kentucky economic developers. So today is about Size Up Kentucky, or today is about hashtag Size Up Kentucky, which we'll demonstrate so that you can see the analytical and the comparative and the strategic advantages of this platform. And today also begins a challenge that we all collectively have now to learn this platform and to use this platform to its fullest advantages. So from here, let me encourage you to share this with your business communities, to share this with your chambers, with your SBDCs, so that they are aware of this tool and that we can take advantage of what is a special opportunity to roll this platform out statewide. I think we are either the second or the third state to do this on a statewide scale. So we're providing these resources for free, and this is an advantage. This is ours from Harlan to Hickman. This is for us to inform our recovery, to inform our resilience, and ultimately our growth from here. So I want to thank Dr. Allison Davis at SEDIC for the leadership that she has provided for Size Up, for the great partnership and attention to this Commonwealth, and to everyone that's on the webinar with us today. We're gonna run from here, and we're gonna learn how this works together. So Mario, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much. My name is Mario Ubalde. I'm the Director of Customer Success for Size Up, and I'll be running you through Size Up. Now, in a normal presentation, I would discuss lots of different industries, but for the purposes of this one, I want to be very linear. This should be interactive though. So at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you should see a button for both chat and Q&A. So at any time, feel free to chat with Matt, Allison, or I. We'll do our best to answer the question in real time, or even note if we'll answer it after the demo is done. There should be about 15 minutes of time after the demo so that we can take more in-depth questions or respond to the unique business questions that you have. So without any further delays, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And Matt and Allison, since you are on audio, if you can just confirm that you're seeing my screen, that would be great. Fantastic. So
confirmed.
Thank you. So this is Size Up Kentucky. Size Up Kentucky is a business analytics tool, and it provides the same type of analytics that your really large businesses would pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to their in-house team or possibly even a consulting firm. But we've designed it to be as simple to use as possible for your small and medium-sized businesses. The only thing you have to know to start with is what you do and where you do it. So in the case of a coffee shop, and we can pick any city in the Commonwealth, but let's go ahead and pick Louisville and click Save. We're gonna go ahead and get started. And what you're gonna see immediately is it's gonna ask you questions about your business, things that you should know, like your annual revenue. So let's say that my coffee shop in Louisville makes $650,000. Immediately, with just one endpoint of data, Size Up super crunches millions of points of data to compare your coffee shop to other coffee shops in the area. And you can see that this is hyper-local information. This is not about the county or the state. This is about specific neighborhoods in Louisville. And you can see that that coffee shop is doing fairly well. The average coffee shop in Louisville is making $593,000. Your coffee shop is making $650,000. The other thing that you'd want to know about your business is, what are the trends within the industry that I'm in? Is my industry growing and there's room to expand, or is my industry shrinking and I need to think about how to optimize? So let's say that I started my coffee shop in 2012. I can actually see the trends for coffee shop openings both nationally and even at the state level, but perhaps I'm looking at a more regional or local level. So you can see, even though you think there's maybe a coffee shop on every corner, that there are still coffee shops opening in the area, which probably indicates that there's still room for that industry to grow. So the other thing as a small business that we often struggle with is, how competitive are we with our salaries? How does this affect employee retention? So I think we can agree that maybe $20,000 is maybe not so much money, but in the context of a coffee shop, it's actually well above the average for Jefferson County. You can actually see the concentration of expenditures in terms of salary by the region. So you can expect to pay your baristas a little bit more within the heart of Louisville, a little bit less outside of it. One of the things that can also be challenging for small businesses is understanding where they fit in terms of the size of their workforce. So 20 people is definitely a small business. So let's go ahead and enter that number. And we can see that through the lens of data, while 20 people seems like a small business, it's actually a very large coffee shop. The average coffee shop in Louisville would have 12 employees and 13 within the state. And you can see that information right here. So at this point, we've been asking you to enter data, but now we can actually start taking some of the information that you have and start calculating additional results for you in terms of cost effectiveness. So the cost effectiveness of this business, because you have more employees and you're paying them slightly more, a little bit less than the county in general, but still fairly competitive. Or we can look at revenue per capita to talk about how you're performing relative to the overall market, which is very good. And as you can imagine, in a coffee shop, you're going to have some amount of turnover. In the example that we're using, we have 20 employees. Well, the average turnover in the coffee industry is 17%. So you're looking at maybe losing somewhere between 3 to 4 employees per year. You might have been losing 2 employees and going, man, I have to deal with recruiting new employees and training them. And boy, this is a real pain having to lose 2 people per year. But in your industry, the average company would be losing 3 to 4 people. So perhaps that higher salary that you have is actually enabling you to have better retention of your employees. So the other considerations for a lot of small businesses are healthcare costs, which we can look at here, and also workers' comp. So each of these KPIs or key performance indicators have a lot of description and information for you. But if you just want to look at the dashboard, you can go ahead and click Summary View, and you get a quick dashboard of how your business is performing in your industry versus similar competitors. And it's very simple to understand. As you can see, red is a little bit lower, green is a little bit higher. Now, these are not indicators that you're doing good or bad. They're just a way to indicate how you're performing against similar businesses in your industry and give you thoughts for further actions where you want to optimize your business. And you can even specify by diving into a KPI whether you're a startup, so you're trying to start a business, or an established business. And the type of considerations and recommendations that you'll get will be different based on that criteria. So this is the first tool in Size Up Kentucky to allow you and your local businesses to understand how they're performing and start the process of analyzing how they want to optimize their performance. You'll see right next to that is the competition tab. We'll go ahead and click on that tab. And what we'll see very quickly is a list of all of the businesses that may be competing with our coffee shop. Now, as you know, there's a lot of different types of businesses that sell coffee. So these are coffee shops, but you may get your coffee from other places. And so Size Up allows you to define how your business is performing for your local market. Perhaps in your market, people get coffee from diners Or perhaps, as they do where I live, there are a lot of bakeries that sell coffee. So you can define the marketplace as you see it to provide the breadth and the depth of the type of businesses that you're competing with. And so you can see all of your competitors here. You could, of course, identify a specific business by clicking on the list, or if you prefer to navigate the map visually, you can go ahead and then click on the number here to see the exact business, their website if you want to look at how they're performing, and other information. One of the things that you may want to do is overlay the data with additional data to help you triangulate the type of information that you're looking for. So right now we're looking at competition in the coffee industry, but maybe I want to look at expenditures within that industry to understand where the concentration of money is going. So we're looking at food and beverages, but in this case, let's go ahead and look at food away from home and snacks and non-alcoholic beverages. And so what we're going to start seeing again is hyper-local data in terms of expenditures in the coffee industry. And so you can see these red areas as a total are bringing in 2.9 to 4.1 million. And this orange area here is bringing in 784,000 to 1.3 million. So these are totals, and then these are averages by household. The reason that this is important is you may want to visit some of the coffee shops in some of these higher performing areas to see perhaps why they're performing so well, or what's unique about that area in terms of how they market to attract people to that area. But that just tells part of the story of your business. So the other thing that you'd want to look at is customers. And this is a real use case that we're seeing right now throughout the US, which is a lot of people have switched from business to consumer or selling direct to the consumer to providing more business to business services. Perhaps there's a small business that they want to buy a canteen of coffee or coffee services for health reasons. They don't want people in the kitchen area making coffee. So we could look at customers in other small businesses that might buy coffee in sort of a more volume setting than just a single cup. So we could look at offices of attorneys, or we could also look at accountants. And so you just click this industry tab and then list the type of people that you are interested, accounting, auditing, and bookkeeping services. And now you'll overlay not just your competition in those orange dots, but also the industries that you're trying to sell to in the green dots here, along with any other industries that you feel are valid customers for your product. As with the other map, you see that you can dive in and select the push pin and get information about a specific business, and then click on that URL, do research on that business so your reach out to them to sell is more effective because you're well informed. So we've analyzed where your competition is, we've analyzed where your potential customers are, but there's more to the business life cycle than just that, which is you need to get supplies. Whether you're a fancy coffee shop, whether you're selling to a business or you're selling to individuals, you do need napkins and cups and paper plates. So I'm going to go ahead and put in restaurant equipment and supply wholesales. So now what we'll do is we'll map all of the places where we can get the things that we need to power our coffee business. Now, this may just be part of your business model, but maybe you have a very specific business model. In the time of this pandemic, you may need coffee beans, and maybe you can't get them shipped from Italy or Indonesia or wherever your coffee beans are getting roasted. So we could actually look at roasted coffee and identify local coffee, because that's what you're trying to present as a unique service, selling locally roasted beans for your coffee store. So now you're looking again at all of this information. Now, I know we're talking about coffee stores, but maybe you're selling something that's also unique, a unique mug. Again, roasted coffee that you're roasting in-house. So the one thing that SizeUp doesn't do for you is limit where you think you can sell your product. The analysis always has to start within the Commonwealth of Kentucky, but if we went back to food and beverage sales, and we were specifically looking at a category, then we can zoom out as far as we want to show that information both at the county level. I'll just zoom out for a second. And let me go ahead and I think I'm trying to plot all of the coffee shops in the entire state of Kentucky. So that may take a little bit, but we'll go back to the heat map. Oops, sorry about that. I clicked the reset button there. There we go. And we'll show you that you're not just limited to the metro area, but you can zoom out. And now you're starting to see it at the county level and at the state level. And if we zoom out further, the national level. So if you were in a business that is exporting goods, you can actually identify the concentration in the category that you're interested in. So, showed you the second tool, which is the competition tool, and now we're going to head on to the advertising tool. Why the advertising tool is so valuable is that in this market, the idea of like mass marketing, it's really not something that's done anymore. Through the use of online tools, you can actually target very specific audiences. And you can even go on, say, Google AdWords or Facebook ads, and you can say, I really want to market to a very specific group. And we'll talk about that using the filters. So here we are looking at the coffee shop industry in the Louisville area, and we're looking at it in terms of total revenue. Size Up in mere seconds has calculated the zip codes where there's the highest amount of revenue for coffee expenditures. But maybe your analysis is going to be a little bit different. Maybe we want to look at underserved markets. So these are markets where spending is high on coffee, but business revenue is low in that category. So we can go ahead and select most underserved markets. And the map will dynamically update to show you the zip codes that are underserved in terms of coffee. Now, you may have a very specific business model. As I mentioned, we were talking about coffee stores that might be providing like local organic roasted coffee. So maybe people are going to go a little bit farther than 10 miles to get that cup of coffee because you have a unique value proposition. Maybe they drive up to 15 miles. So we can go ahead and adjust that filter. And you'd think, well, you know, I'm going to be selling this coffee. It might be a little bit more expensive because it's local and organic. I happen to know some friends in the coffee industry, and it turns out the best indicator for whether or not people are going to spend more on a cup of coffee is not income, which you think you might control right here with the household income slider, but it's actually education. So we could go ahead and say, I'm looking for an area that has 25% bachelor's degrees, for example. And you'll see that every time you add a filter, it automatically and dynamically adjusts the zip codes that you would want to target for your specific use case. So in this case, we've kind of identified here on the more eastern part of the Louisville area, those zip codes that are underserved by coffee for people who have a slightly higher average education rate. So you could take this information, you could identify, again, via online advertising tools, ways to advertise to specifically people who have bachelor's degrees in Louisville 40207 or 40205. The other thing you could do is you could look at advertising on bus routes or billboards or neighborhood papers. So what's happened here is we've given, in just a few minutes, a robust analysis of how your business is performing, the areas that are competition, where you may want to partner with some of those other businesses. That's in the case you see that with, you know, Home Depot and Lowe's tend to end up in the same location. Or perhaps you want to identify an area where you're all alone, serving an underserved market. We've also identified your supply chain and possible customers. Along with that, you can overlay additional information like heat maps to understand the concentration of consumer expenditures or the other types of businesses that are in the area and how they're performing. So let me go ahead and pause now and look at the chat and the Q&A, and we can start diving into questions that you have for your unique business. So I am looking at a question from Shelton. What about service businesses that do not have headquarters? Landscapers, plumbers, construction trades. How would that industry sector be accounted for? So Shelton, I did show an example of coffee shops, but actually you can look at any business category. So you went ahead and said landscapers. So we could go ahead and put landscaping in, and you can see that there's landscape designers, landscape contractors. I think for your example, we won't do landscape counseling and planning, but we could look at the landscape contractor in Louisville. And interestingly, I wouldn't have guessed this, the average landscape contractor in terms of revenue makes $614,000, and you can see where they're making a lot of that business in Louisville. So any category is in there. Now, I do agree with you, Shelton. Some businesses do cross over, just like in the example of coffee shops. So you could look at pastries and bakeries there. With landscape contractors, you could also probably look at other categories like lawn and garden services. So the answer is there may not be a single point of information for you, but you may have to look at other data points to triangulate the information that you want. So Shelton, I hope that answers your question. If it did, wonderful. If not, please do respond in the chat. And you're welcome, Shelton. I'm glad that that answered your question. I see another question for, can you search for comparisons of communities that are 5,000 population or 10,000 populations? Absolutely. Any community within the state of, or the Commonwealth of Kentucky, apologies, can be included here. So I'm just gonna pick Hopkinsville randomly, and what you'll see is Hopkinsville is also included, including the benchmarks. One of the things that we should point out is that your analysis always starts at the local level, but then it will filter up. So in this case, this is your landscape contractor business in Hopkinsville. This is the average revenue that is there in Hopkinsville. This is the average revenue in the county, the metro area, the state, and then the nation. So you will always want to enter your local city, and then it will generate those comparisons at the level that you think best represents your trade area. A question from Josanne. The source for the expenditure data. Sure, that is a fantastic question. So SizeUp combines hundreds of different data sources for all the different KPIs that you're seeing. The firmographic data, or this data here, this business, this location, this phone number, so on and so forth, that information is updated quarterly or 4 times a year. And the consumer expenditure data is based off of, as you know, our credit card companies know more about how we spend our money possibly than we do. So we combine all of those data sources and we update it twice annually. So the consumer expenditure data that you're seeing now is 2019 and 2020 data. So I see another question. And Matt and Allison, if you want to jump in here with your local expertise, feel free at any time. Correlation between access to this program and business cash flow or ROI. I'm not sure if I understand the exact question that's being asked there, but if you want to jump in there and I don't know.
Mario, you know, one of the questions that we have are like, what are some, I mean, I don't know if you have an exact ROI, but what are some of the success stories that folks who have used this type of intelligence in terms of being able to expand or to increase cash flow, revenue, things like that?
Sure. So I can use different examples. Obviously, throughout the nation, it functions differently. One of the big businesses in North Texas are beauty salons. So I've shared with you, you know, there are all these jokes about hair or bigger hair in the Big D or Dallas, but we have seen that value. And so they've actually had an explosion of local business beauty salons, and they have special weeks for their SizeUp users to focus on those categories. I also have an example from accounting firms that have been able to use this application to target other mid-sized businesses. So these are mid-size accounting firms targeting other mid-sized businesses that previously were working with some of the larger accounting firms. So each use case is going to be very different. Obviously, from an entrepreneurial perspective, a retail business can really benefit when they're planning on how to start their business. The other thing that we talked about, because they don't know, I mean, if I was opening a coffee shop in Louisville, and I think for those who are listening, I wouldn't have guessed that the average coffee shop is making, you know, close to $750,000 of $1 million. Sorry, I went to roasted coffee. And I'll bring up another example of that shortly. There we go. So, and again, now we're in Hopkinsville, not Louisville or Lexington, but you can see all the information there. One of the best pieces of information is not just creating that knowledge within yourself, but then being able to share that with people. So when we were looking at coffee shops and we put in 20 people as the average, as your a number of employees, if you go to a bank and you say, I'm a 20-person, shop, they're going to go, hey, you're a small business. This may not be the type of business that we invest in. But when you tell them that you're actually a small business, but a very large coffee shop, almost a third larger than the average coffee shop, it changes the way that they perceive what you're doing. So it's really important to always take that data and then view it from the lens of what is regular for that industry, and then be able to share that with your investors. And so we've seen a lot of people who take this information and it becomes part of their business plan and their ability to attract investments to expand their business. So Bruce had a similar question about the source of the data. And then in terms of talk about the data related to tourism. Ira, if you can maybe explain what you're asking there, I'm happy to dive in for you. So, and again, I can't necessarily talk about tourism in general. You certainly can look at consumer expenditures, and you can look at, if you were looking at tours, certainly you can look at tour operators, sightseeing tour companies. So this type of information might be helpful. And then you can see where consumer expenditures are in that particular category. I know that a lot of tour companies start off as walking tours. Let's go ahead. Apparently not so much walking tours in Hopkinsville, but let's go to Lexington, perhaps as an example, where we'll pick up a little bit more information. And you can see whether that industry is perhaps expanding or contracting. So you can see that at a national level. So again, it's just going to depend exactly what you're looking for. Generally, when you're looking at any particular type of industry, you're going to want to look at perhaps other indicators for that. It could be dining out for tourism. It could be lots of things. But Ira, if you can be a little bit more specific, happy to dive in.
Mari, there's a question in the chat box, not the Q&A, that is maybe think about, and I was doing this the other day, thinking about starting my own coffee shop, which is ridiculous. But I was looking in Lexington. So not so much about where I would expand, but if I was thinking about starting a new location, where, how would I know what's doable?
Sure, absolutely. So again, I just reset the revenue to 500,000. So I think this is Josanne's asking this question. Can you walk using the tool for a startup? Absolutely. So if I was a startup and we could look at a coffee shop, we could look at any other category. But if I was looking at the first thing I want to know is what would I be expected? I'm doing back of the napkin math here to understand, I'm going to need to sell X amount of cups of coffee or pastries or whatnot. And that the average coffee shop in Lexington is making almost $750,000. So I want to understand the environment in which I would be able to achieve at least that average to be competitive. And I'd start looking at the industry as a total. So the first thing that's happened, and a lot of entrepreneurs are in this situation, they don't know what the average business in that area is making. So that bench point in and of itself can help them refine their business plan. The next thing, as I said, is I'd want to look at the trends in the market. So mind you, this is just an indicator that within the metro area in 2019, you can see that 5 coffee shops were started. So you can kind of see the ups and downs in that industry. If I were looking at, and I'm using, this is probably a bad example, but if I was thinking about starting like a DVD rental business, you'd probably see a flat line there. And so the first thing that you want to do is say, maybe this industry isn't robust as I thought, and maybe I need to look at something adjacent to that, or maybe in a different industry altogether. So what I'm seeing here is that there is still room for coffee businesses to open in the Lexington area. The trend, of course, was going up. Now it seems to be leveling out. Maybe it's slowing down. But that's natural for businesses in different industries to experience that boom and bust. I'm sure if we were looking for like cycling studios, you'd probably see that trending down. And if you're looking at other exercise categories, you'd see it trending up. Salary is key. If I was an entrepreneur, I may not know It's very challenging as an entrepreneur to go over to Joe's coffee shop and say, hey, Joe, I'm thinking of opening up a business that's going to compete with yours, but I need to know how much you pay people. So having some information that is a little bit more anonymous can be very helpful. As I said, I put in $20,000. It was around $13,000, I believe, in Louisville, and about the same, a little bit more in Lexington, Fayette, 13,000, so almost 14,000 for the average barista in that area. So you start to identify, A, what your revenue is. So you're looking at about $750,000. The average salary, you're gonna have to pay about $14,000. And if you wanted to have, or you were planning to have the average number of employees, I believe it was 12 in Louisville, and here you can see it's 15. So the average coffee shop in Lexington has about 3 more employees than the average coffee shop in Louisville. Why this matters? Perhaps you visited both cities, you have an idea of how different types of coffee shops run in those environments. Maybe you're in Lexington, but you're basing it off of Louisville, a coffee shop model. And so you'd want to identify kind of the size and the type of employees that you were looking for. Using specialty coffee as an example, maybe you want to have fewer employees that are paid higher because the depth of knowledge that they're going to need about the beans, how they're roasted, how they're prepared, might be different than a coffee shop where you're focused on volume, where you need lots of employees who can turn the orders over very quickly. And so then this also gets to the cost effectiveness, right? If you're paying more employees, more money, your cost effectiveness would be affected. Where this happens in terms of revenue per capita, if you were looking at part of the city that perhaps is less populated, less densely populated, you would want to identify, again, concentrations that suit your business model. So that's how I would take it through the process of a startup. You're evaluating these things, and then you're gonna, of course, look at the considerations as a startup as opposed to an existing business. So maybe you don't have the same expectation to make $750,000 during your first year because you are still growing your business. So it might be on the lower end of that scale. So hopefully, Allison, that answered the question.
It did for me, hopefully for Carmen as well, or not for Carmen who asked it.
Right. And then Katie is asking a question about where does the data come from. Again, it's hundreds of different data sources. It's the same data sources that Google Maps uses their base layer data, or Yelp or Bing Maps, along with public information. So turnover comes from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. A lot of that information is updated annually, although we update it more quickly if, of course, some of those services provide that information. But most government agencies will provide that data on an annual basis. Again, firmographic is updated quarterly, and so that means your benchmarks and everything else are getting updated quarterly, and the consumer expenditures are being updated twice annually. And I don't know while I was talking if I missed any other questions.
I answered all the questions, and so I'll ask for your forgiveness later.
No.
Okay.
This is great. It's a team effort, right? Because there's a lot of people who have a lot of great questions. Melissa's asking a question: are the salaries based on a 52 or 52 40-hour weeks? So the answer is salaries are based on an average. So if you have a lot of, and I will show you. So we're in coffee shops. So when I say that this is the average salary, that is going to be a blend of both part-time, full-time, salaried, hourly employees, which is very normal for something like a coffee shop. If we were to look at something else like attorneys, there we go, you're gonna tend to see more kind of full-time attorneys. Oh, it's redoing all the demographics in the category. So you can actually see for attorneys, you're gonna get an answer of $60,000. Now that's going to be a combination of, partners, paralegals, administrative people, and everything else. So depending on the industry you're in, the salary will reflect the kind of broad makeup of full-time, part-time employees. Sorry, just trying to get there. Average Lexington coffee shop makes $500,000. Does size up adjust for specific data for each location or one business? Yes. So as you saw when we were on the competition tool, we're not averaging out, we're averaging out all coffee shops. We're not saying this is what Starbucks makes or Dunkin' Donut makes or Joe's Coffee Shop. So in the case of, and I'm sorry, I'm on attorneys right now, but just to get back to Stephen's question. Yes, I was typing in Starbucks, which is not an industry, it is just a business. So I'll fix that. So you can actually see that there are, these are all the coffee shops. So there's a Starbucks here. I'm sure if we go on to page 2, there's additional Starbucks. Each location is calculated to create the average within that industry. So not all Starbucks make the same, not all Joe's Coffee Shop or Krispy Kremes make the same. But the average is all of those coffee shops together. So as I said, in this example, I put 500,000, but this average for the city is an average of all coffee shops. All right. I want to identify the 10 best business opportunities in tourism in Kentucky to stimulate thinking by area. Boy, Ira, you are challenging me here. So I think it's, so tourism is really broad. As someone who has 2 daughters, and I went on a trip, the idea of tourism and fun for my daughters, my 3- and 8-year-old daughters, is very different than my idea of fun. So we weren't spending a lot of time in the museums. So I think I would, using your example, I might look, if we were doing like ecotourism, and I know obviously in Kentucky you have a lot of wonderful natural resources and great geography, I might look, you know, at maybe recreational spending. You know, it's hard to say, but I might look at sporting and recreational camps. I might look at, you know, specific categories like fishing, fishing equipment supply stores. And so that gets the issue of, again, targeted marketing as well. But I think it's a really good question. I'm not sure that there's one way to answer it. But I'd look at those, and then I'd probably overlay that with expenditures within a given category. So this comes to knowing the exact type of tourism that you're looking to promote. So obviously, you know, Lexington or Louisville would have different cultural amenities than perhaps Frankfurt. So I would look at those industry categories in terms of the density. So here we are, and I'm gonna zoom out. I mean, let's do it. So we actually are now popping into parts of Ohio, Indianapolis, and we will get all of those red dots or orange dots showing you the concentration right now of fishing equipment supplies stores. And I do apologize. I know this is a webinar, so you may not see it. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit to make it more visible to you. So you can kind of see these little orange dots here, and you can see that there's a concentration. You might look over here and go, oh, look, over at Huntington, for a more, you know, a less densely populated area, there's actually quite a few dots. Maybe there's an opportunity there to promote tourism in that fishing industry out there. So it's just gonna kind of depend on what you're looking for. So I hope that that answers some of your question. Again, with Size Up and with your partners, it's certainly something you can sit down and take a look at, well, frankly, for hours, as you look at very different data points. So hopefully that those orange dots came in for you. Question from Libby. Yes, Libby, we're recording this right now, and we will eventually render that video. We'll get rid of any extraneous parts of the video and then be able to provide that online so that you can watch the video at a later time or review it when you have more free time. So Mike's asking a question. So yes, the industry classifications are based off of SIC and NAICS codes, but we've designed this to be very easy to use. So you just type in, it has what's called heuristic search. So if you were starting, say, a car shop, you'll also pick up categories that have automobile in the name. But all you have to do is just enter the industry that you want in plain English, and it will find matches for you.
But just to clarify, Mario, but you cannot search by NAICS code. So you couldn't put in a 6-digit NAICS code.
That is correct. You cannot put in, 112 and get that specific industry. That is correct. But one thing that I should point out is that, and we talked about both the breadth and the depth. So right now, we could do burger restaurants, for example. And that's gonna allow us to benchmark ourselves against burger restaurants. And I'm just making this up, 500,000. And apparently, Taco Tuesdays may be a thing, but I guess burger restaurants are a little bit more popular in Lexington than tacos. We need to invent Burger Fridays. But what you'd see here is this is burger restaurants. Size Up can allow you to go as high as you want. So right now we're looking at burger restaurants, just burger restaurants. If we went to the restaurant category, so now we'd be benchmarking all restaurants, everything from your, Michelin-starred fine dining to, the donut shop down the street. And so you get that average. And it's very similar. So you can look at very broad categories, or you can dive deeper if you think that that is going to be the model that your business is following. Kimberly's asking a question about data source for the business information, and can we see employment for a single business at a specific location? It's a great question, and I'm gonna respond to that and actually a little bit more. So we certainly have all of this information. We also want to respect the privacy of all of these businesses. So the information in terms of number of employees, revenue, things of that matter, they're always aggregated at the bare minimum of a city level. So if there's not enough, and I know because you're like, well, I'll just go look at the city, and then if there's only one coffee shop in that entire city, now I know what that coffee shop is making. We're not going to do it quite that way. It's because we do want to protect both the business's privacy and also yours as well. So one of the things that I should point out is you'll notice that there's a sign-in button here. All the sign-in button does is if you are, let's say you're at work, again, using the coffee shop example, you're in the back office, you're doing analysis, you close up shop, you go home, maybe it's the evening or weekend, and you want to come back to the type of analysis you're doing, all the sign-in does is it saves the values for you so you don't have to re-enter them again. We don't track what people are doing, and the individual business information is aggregated at such a level that it provides a level of anonymity where the information is valuable, but we're not, providing proprietary information about that specific business. That was a question from Kimberly. A couple more questions. Yes, so Lisa, I guess I just anticipated your question. Yes, if we were logged in, all of that information is private. We don't track that, we don't sell it. You're not gonna get any marketing from us or KAED or SETIC. This is purely a free tool to help local businesses. Katie's asked a question, how do you access this tool? It is a website, and this is part of the beauty of Size Up. A lot of owner-operators, a lot of location managers are so busy running their business, when they have time to do this type of analysis is after hours or on the weekends. So this tool is available 24/7. So it will be there for you when you have time to use it. It is on a website. It is also responsive design. So not that people are spending that much time on public transit right now, but if all you have is a phone or a tablet, we've designed this to be accessible. So I just shrunk down the screen, and as you see, it's completely responsive design. The map and the list have now been compressed into a single column. But if you wanted to look at this particular Starbucks, you can click on the list. So we've designed it to be accessible 24/7, and we've designed it to be accessible on any device that you have, phone, tablet, even if you're accessing it on one of those Apple TVs or whatnot. It will expand or contract to suit whatever device you're using to access it. Trying to see, were there any other questions that I should have paid attention to?
Mario, the last question that Ira just posted, which is what is the industries tab?
Sure. So what the industries is, and this works for both the customers and suppliers tab, this is where you can define your kind of business model. So I was using the example of coffee shops here, but if you think your competitor is in another industry, again, if it's in the diner industry, which is different from coffee shops, if it was in a pastry shop, and I'm just making this up here, or bakery, there we go. There's cake and pie bakeries. So you can define this however you want. It's also the same with the customers. So let me give you an example of that might be actually a little bit more clear. So if I were in lumber wholesale, obviously I don't think I'm competing with cake and pie bakeries, but these are the lumber wholesalers in the Lexington area. So for customers, I might be selling to construction companies, right? And I could be specific. I'm looking at single family. The type of lumber that I produce is for single family homes. Or perhaps I'm selling to hardware stores. So what you can do is you can type in, sorry, there it is, hardware stores. So the industry tabs allows you to define the breadth of the market that you're pursuing on the customer tab. Or again, if I switched this equation around, I'm no longer lumber wholesale, but I'm in construction. Patio and deck construction definitely could use wood. Then I might put in the suppliers tab under industry, I might put in lumber wholesale. So you get the idea. So the industry tabs is what allows you to look at the market that you're interested in analyzing. Obviously the spatial relationships and then individual information. So Valley View Hardwoods at Green Tree Forest, here's their phone number. I'm in the patio and deck business. I want to call them up to find out how much they're selling their lumber for. So this gives me information, and I think this is a real use case now. Maybe you used to get wood shipped over from Washington, right? Where there's tons of trees. Maybe that's not happening right now. Washington was where the big outbreaks were. Maybe it affect their production, so you need to look at more local services or local companies that can provide that. So you can look at it right here and then make contact with those companies. Robert asked a question, can you compare snapshots in time, say business locations in 2018? So the answer is the information is always kept up to date. Where you would look at industry trends overall would be, again, in that year started. I guess we're going to find out a lot about patio and deck construction in the Lexington area. So we'll go off of national, state. So the answer is there was a little bit of an explosion in 2016, but it's been flat for the past 3 years. So that's where you would see that information of of business locations in terms of time. Can the data be exported to an Excel file? At this point, no. You certainly could cut and paste it in. We don't have a report builder tool built into it. It's one of those things. Thank you for the feedback. We add that to our product roadmap, and certainly we'll keep Matt and Allison apprised, and I know they will share that to you. We do have a PDF export tool that we're in testing right now. So again, not in Excel, but a PDF export tool. Most of the people who use our application, as you know, I'm on a Mac, you can just save directly to a PDF. And you can do the same thing on a PC. You can also, of course, take screenshots and then annotate them if you're creating a business plan. And that's what most people do. So Melissa, I believe I answered your question there. And I'm just running through chat to see if there's anything else that I missed. And as I said, I wanted to leave lots of times for a deeper dive in Q&A. We're almost 7 minutes to the top of the hour. So if there are more questions, happy to take the time to answer them or to look at other examples, or I'm also happy to give you time back in your day to hopefully hop on Size Up Kentucky and start playing around with some of the data yourself. I don't see any other chat or Q&A, so I hope that that means people have a great start on understanding how it operates, and now they can really dive deep and certainly shoot over those additional questions as they come to them.
Oh, Mario, there was one, I think there should leave just a minute or so to talk about our plans for KAED and for SEDEC in terms of our support. For many of you who are on and we're going through this, there's a lot of information. It looks like a lot of fun. It can be used in multiple ways. So we will be posting this webinar once Mario goes through and edits it so he looks perfect the entire time. That will be posted. There's also a couple of tutorials that are available, but we will also be working across the state, particularly with our KAED membership. With local chambers of commerce, the SBDCs, to continue to build capacity around this tool so that it's used most effectively. Any suggestions that you all have, any areas that you think we need to hone in on, we are always willing to help that part out. So just let us know, but we don't intend on just sort of dropping this on people and then walking away, because that means it likely will be underutilized. We invested in this because we think it's a really powerful tool, and we want to equip our folks with it, and we want to see the success and capture the success and communicate the success. So that can only happen if we can make sure you all feel comfortable with the tool moving forward. If folks have some experience with it if in other places, let us know. You'll be our next trainer.
So Matt, I wasn't sure if you had any other or I shouldn't say last words, but any final words for this particular webinar?
But as always, Dr. Davis carries the messaging much better and more eloquently than I am capable. So I appreciate Dr. Davis's leadership for this, for enabling the rollout and the dissemination of this powerful tool to Kentucky and being a national best practice. And so thank you, Dr. Davis, and to UK, to our friends at Size Up, and Mario, who is a coffee connoisseur. That's not just his test to demonstrate this, but he is a big time coffee lover. So thank you, Mario, and to all that are with us.